So when it comes to buying a house, there tends to be what I believe is three different numbers. You have the listing price, which is really a marketing price.
Yeah.
The listing price is the marketing price. It's to get someone to put their foot in the door. Then there's the bid price, what someone is saying they're willing to bid on it. And then finally you come down to the appraisal. So really, what do you see as the difference between all these? Hello all, and welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate USA. Today we have Anthony Alberti of A&M Appraisals, and we're talking all thing appraisals. Remember, hit the like and subscribe button for more info. Remember, hit the like and subscribe button for more weekly content. Let's get going. Welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate USA, everyone. Today we have Anthony Alberti with A&M Appraisals.
How you doing, Craig?
Doing very well. Can we start off with you telling us how you got into the business?
Pretty much from my family. So my father was doing appraisals for more than 20 years. He was trained by a close family friend who started doing it pretty much at the inception of appraisals as we know it, in the late 80s. So, my dad went and did this, got his education.
Oh, so appraisals aren't that old, the idea of doing one.
So the way that we would do them now, like real estate appraisals, has only been since Dodd-Frank. So that was like the savings and loans crisis in the 80s that kind of created this need. Certainly, there's been all different forms of appraisals for years before that, but the rules, the guidelines that we have to follow, and the licensures and all that has been since then. So,
Cool.
Yeah, he got the education for that while we were kids, and, I've been seeing him do it most of my life, and once I graduated from college, I was doing, like, office jobs and certain things, and he said, "Do you want me to train you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll see what it's like," and I was doing it on the side for many years, and then, over the past year and a half, I've made it my core job, my business.
So I guess we can start with, why are appraisals important? Especially, we kind of just track the history of it. So why are they important nowadays?
So they're important and remain to be important since this started and up till now. Because we're trained to provide what's called the market value on the property. And that, mainly works for the lenders to make sure that that's balanced with whatever their exposure is on a mortgage. So I would say it's important for everybody involved, because especially for the buyers, they should know if the price that they're paying or want to pay is comparable to what the house is worth. You don't want to pay too much. Somebody selling their house doesn't want to get too little. And certainly, banks and mortgages and mortgage lenders, want to make sure that they're protected. You don't. A lot of those rules were reinforced after the last housing market crash, in 2008. So really, appraisals continue to be important to protect everybody, and and make sure there's lowering risks of foreclosures and subprime lending and things like that.
Yeah. So how does one do an appraisal? For realtors, when we go to look at what to put in as a bid, we do CMAs, so we figure out our comps, things like that. But those tend to be like, you look at surrounding houses that are supposedly pretty close to being like that. So I'm assuming appraisals are like that, but more in depth.
Pretty much, Craig. Yeah, it's very similar to a CMA or a BPO. Appraisers, would typically go to the subject property, the house that's for sale, and do their inspection, examination on it. And then we would look for comparables the same way, you would. And, there are certain major details that I would say every realtor and appraiser considers in comparison, like how big the house is, how big the land is, is it by a highway, is it by a park? But then there's like little things that, people can differ on, and it's market dependent. How much is a full bathroom worth versus a half bathroom? How much is a house that, just had the kitchen remodeled versus a house that has a dated kitchen? Those are a little bit more variable, but, ultimately we do our best to analyze the market we're in, and that is very locational. So we do our best to find houses that are similar as possible, close to the house that we're looking at. And you go from there. You compare them and add and subtract, the value of the differences between them until you kind of reconcile into what we would say is a market value for the house. Certainly what you said, very similar, probably a little more detail, but
yeah, because every time I've seen appraisers, they're going out there, they're taking little sketches. Sometimes they're measuring the rooms, whereas I'm just like, there's a bedroom.
Yeah, so part of what we have to do, and this has actually changed this year too, we have to follow a measurement procedure in accordance with ANSI, which is like a standard measurement institute. So that's going to be even more homogeneous now among appraisals. It probably will eventually extend to other real estate professionals, so fair warning. But
oh God. Okay.
But a big part of it is measuring the house, evaluating what the rooms are like, the room count, and whether things are in the basement, if they're on the first floor or second floor, and going from there. So yeah, you've seen enough. We go around, we make our measurements, we take lots of pictures. Somebody that I work for says, we're the eyes and ears for the lender. So, we have to report what we see.
Yeah. So what happens when you have a property that you can't find comps on? Like in this area, that's not really a huge issue. I find Essex and Union County, especially Hudson County, it's just so built up. There's so much. But every so often you just come into contact with a property, you're like, this is just unlike other things.
Yeah.
So how do you go about that?
You do your best to boil down the main details, things like we just talked about, like the size and the lot and what's surrounding it, the neighborhood. And then, you might have to expand your search to maybe look at houses that sold a little while ago, maybe outside of 6 months, maybe even outside of a year. Or if the house is really unique, you might have to go into other towns. I've certainly done houses, what I would say are over improved, where they're too big or too luxurious for their area. And it doesn't make sense to compare to other houses in the town because you're not going to find any. And someone that would be wants a house like that could pay for that, may not go to that town anyway. So there's situations that have had come up where you might have to look, in the county. You might have to go to different areas. But then, if you're going to go to a different town, some towns have higher property values than others, even for the same type of house. So you also have to keep track of that if you're going to go somewhere else. Yeah. New Jersey, like you said, is very built up. So a lot of times you can find things that are pretty similar. The New Jersey appraisers do see a wide variety of properties. They're not as homogeneous as in Western states like Utah that have township style buildings where all the towns are on the same size lots and they're all the same type, and you could see this house has a deck and this house doesn't, and this house sold for $3,000 more, so that's how much the deck is worth. You can't get that accurate, so to speak, or that detailed with New Jersey homes, because there is a lot of variance on any given street. There's all different kinds of houses, but like you said, in general, in any one town, if it's built up, you'll find some similar homes.
Cool. So when it comes to buying a house, there tends to be what I believe is 3 different numbers. You have the listing price, which is really a marketing price. The listing price is the marketing price. It's to get someone to put their foot in the door. Then there's the bid price, what someone is saying they're willing to bid on it. And then finally, you come down to the appraisal. So really, what do you see as the difference between all these?
So in our education as appraisals, we have different definitions for price versus value. Price is straight up what someone is willing to pay. Like one person paid for this thing. So it's an interesting question to frame it that way, because we do part of finding the value, which is what we say is what it's actually worth, is by taking the prices of other homes that it just sold. So what I would say was that the listing or the marketing price and then the bid price aren't really the value. They're not what the house. I mean, they can be what the house is worth, but they're not.
Yeah.
Whatever that number is doesn't mean that the house is worth that much. You know,
They're connected to it. They're connected to it.
It should,
but they're not it.
It should be. Yeah, no, it should be, and most real estate professionals want to be close. I mean, certainly the listing price, I would say, I would give the least weight. Like you said, it's more of a marketing tool to get your foot in the door. So, you know, a savvy realtor in a certain market would be able to list the price in a certain way, maybe to encourage a bidding war. You know, if it's a little bit under what they think it might actually sell for, that could be a choice on your listing. The bid price, kind of whatever ends up being signed on the contract, it should be close. You know, if everybody's operating with the same information, and that's part of what we define the value as. If somebody in the market is operating with, you know, relatively good information and the house has had a certain amount of exposure, you know, you hope that everybody's narrowing down to that number, you know. And I see that much of the time in my appraisals. You know, realtors want to make sure that everybody's getting the right deal. You know, you want to make sure things close and everybody's happy. So, you know, that's part of, you know, I don't look at happiness necessarily, but obviously the things that people care about in the homes are the things that add value to the homes. Yeah. And we're kind of looking at it from those different directions, hopefully going to the same place.
Because as a general rule, the realtor is doing a CMA if you have a buyer, you do a CMA to be like, this is what I think the house is worth. Now, that's the listing price. Now, how do we win it? And then from the flip side, if you're trying to sell it, I've done the CMA. This is what I believe it's worth. Now, what should we list it at in order to then try to get it to go above? So you got the CMA, then you have the list price, and then hopefully a higher sales price.
Yeah, ideally for the seller, that's what you would want to see. But a lot of that is going to depend on how the market's behaving now, too. You know, do you want to sell quickly? Do you want to leave it on the market for a little bit to see if, you know, to field more bids? You know, do you want to set it closer to what you think it's worth to weed out people that maybe won't qualify? You know, that could be another thing too. You know, do you want to get a bunch of bids that are the list price when you're like, I really should be going for more than the list price? You know, I don't know as much about those considerations. Obviously, that's more your expertise. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, the buyer and the seller kind of have those different intentions. But, you know, ultimately, if everybody understands that it's a negotiation, you hopefully arrive to something that you all can agree on. And many times that ends up, you know, agreeing with the value, what we would say is the value, because you're coming from the different directions.
Awesome. Right. So really the last thing is, how do people get in contact with you?
Well, if you need an appraisal, I have my phone number. Should I just lay it out now?
Yeah.
It's 908-294-8008. It's a cell, so you're definitely, if you want to text, it's totally fine. And my email address is aandmappraisals@gmail.com. So you would do the letter A, spell the word and M appraisals@gmail.com. Certainly available for curious people if you want a private valuation. You know, it doesn't hurt, and my fees are reasonable. So, you know, if you want to know before you sell, certainly there to help. I've done estates. I've done, private jobs for divorce proceedings. There's even though you and I mainly deal with buying and selling and lending. There's lots of other purposes that you could need an appraisal. So
cool. All right. Well, thank you. I think we've covered everything for today. Awesome.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Craig.
Thank you, Anthony.
No problem.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Let me